we're the only creature in the animal kingdom who can laugh, other than the hyenas when he's ripping you apart. But, you know, I just think that's something we should keep in mind. When the road comes down to the butternut grove to old Bill Skinner's stream, do tell it's a noonday bell, it's time for a summertime dream. I'm just trying to connect the dots in the chaos we're all walking through in the language of laughs. And, I mean, you know, life is tough. You might as well laugh. And when you see people laughing, you realize how much we are the same, because you've got the professor and plumber sitting side by side laughing at the same joke, right? Right? Yeah, right. And everything else is just a spoiler on a Dodge Neon. When you've got the show and the book, they're different sides of the same coin. And I wrote the book during lockdown, but the book allowed me to explore the narrative and pay attention to the emotional note I wanted to hit rather than worrying about getting laughs all the time. But they both complement each other. I've always enjoyed having words trip off the tongue and tickle the ear as well as the funny bone. But it was something I had to evolve into. And when I first started stand-up, I had all this stuff I wanted to say, and it would get all knotted up. In fact, when I was a kid, I stuttered. And so we went to a speech therapist, and then we went to a doctor, and he said he's just got so many thoughts in his head, and he's trying to get them out too fast. And of course, in years later, being diagnosed with ADHD, it all makes sense. But when you're up there on stage in the high wire, and after 30 years in stand-up, it's a wonderful feeling. It's a sanctuary. It's your home. And it's where you can channel the life force to the best of your abilities. And in a day where everything is fractured, there's so much polarization, you know, whether it's the overly sensitive legions of woke who can't take a joke, or the foot soldiers in the armies of the New Reich, where up is down and blue is brown, whose leaders are a joke. And so for the 2 hours I'm on that stage, somehow you manage to get everyone on the same page. And they all enjoy themselves and process the trauma of their daily march through life's bright fury in the language of laughs. It's a wonderful feeling. Ernest Buckler, The Mountain and the Valley, one of the best. I got goosebumps mentioning his name, you know, and The Nymph and the Lamp. Thomas H. Riddell, of course.
An entire paragraph.
How many? You know what? I will guarantee you, in my 45 years in the business, no one's ever dropped an Ernest Buckler orange reference at my company. So thanks. Yeah, it's a little bit of both. First of all, my father could really wrap his tongue around a profanity, but it was so alliterative. Every time my teacher would phone home if I made lower than 65 out of 100 in grade 8 math, right? And so I'd come home and the test would be burning a hole in my pocket like the map of Bonanza. But he said, Lord jumping Jesus, you better start passing math, you sawed-off little Christer. There's going to be a stranger in hell for breakfast by the Lord snapping arseholes. And I said, I kept flunking just to hear the alliteration. There's something about what the beautiful gifts that he and my mom gave me. My relations were great storytellers, and they were funny and caustic and salty. As time went on, I must have assimilated that, because when I stepped into stand-up, this love of language was slowly being born. Over time, I guess, I just became more comfortable in my own skin up there, and I was able to honor the language in a way I wanted to, while at the same time honoring the mandate of the microphone and the stand-up context. At 66 years of age, what I care about more than anything else now is the work. And I've always been grateful for every single gig, because the 11 months I was unemployed in Los Angeles and just nosediving into personal debt really sired my desire to achieve a Canadian dream. I've just loved touring this place. It's the generosity of spirit, hands down. It's it. I've seen it everywhere, whether it's, whether it's in Newfoundland and in Thunder Bay, Northern Ontario, the kindness of people who, Saskatchewan, everywhere. It's just a good place to call home, man. I'd much rather be in my vehicle uh, negotiating widow-making strips of asphalt smeared in black ice in order to get to a gig in somewhere that's going to be packed on a frozen February Friday night. It's a wonderful feeling. Canadians don't like their comedy mean, but that doesn't mean that you can't rock the apple cart. That doesn't mean that you can't speak truth to power. That doesn't mean that you have to fold. It doesn't mean that everything has to be nice, because you have to hold power to account, which is the ethos and the mandate of stand-up comedy. But how you do it, and I've always tried to achieve some level of affable subversion. It's because I don't feel like I have the answers. I'm just so excited to be sneaking up on 67 and still hearing laughter from an audience. But I was listening to an interview with Seinfeld a while ago, and he said, I just get the greatest joy from making people laugh and hearing laughter. And that's pretty well the bottom line. It's always been the case with me. I will tell you, when I was on a first name basis with CAA, I've since sold the vehicle, but my 99 Toyota 4Runner, last ones they made in Japan, not a spot of rust on it. I ended up selling it during COVID because I didn't want to pay for 2 parking spots. And quite frankly, I didn't know if I was ever going to work again. And CAA was coming in to boost the battery all the time. And they were the best. They were the best. But I've never had one of those life or death situations, thankfully, where I've seen them coming out of the blizzard at some far point of frontier. But I have battled blizzards that a Yeti wouldn't wander, and knowing full well, had I jackknifed and ended up being hauled into the woods by predators, that CAA would have found the car the next day in a snowdrift.